Hi and welcome to VFX Tutors. I'm Josh, and in this tutorial I'll go through how to prepare your scan and different ways you can retopologize your model to be used in a more production friendly environment. So I have updated to Metascan, and as you can see there's no difference, and it allows me to open my previous files from the first tutorial. And in the previous tutorial we went through how to process our photogrammetry images and create this realistic bread scan. So our next steps are to prepare the scan to be used in a production environment. This means creating a low-res mesh and UVing it, whilst making sure it's at the correct scale and there's no history or any funny transforms on it. We will be using ZBrush or Mudbox to transfer the high-res details into displacement maps and vector displacement maps, and we'll try out both and see what results we get from each one. Once we have done this, we can reproject our textures onto the low-res mesh and fix any parts of the texture that are missing or a little bit odd. So in the first tutorial we finished up with exporting our scans, and now we'll import them into our 3D software. I'm using Maya, but you can use any other 3D software as it will be the same techniques. Okay, so we've opened up Maya. Like I said, you can use pretty much any other 3D software, you don't have to use Maya, but this is my preferred 3D software. So first of all, I'll import our scan. So I'm going to go to File, Import. I'm just going to navigate to our files that we exported. So in our small assets, export. And we have our exports we have here. We have the OBJs and the materials, and we have the textures as well. There's some extra ones from a game one that I've done previously, but that'll be in a different tutorial. So what we'll do, we'll just bring in our ultra dense OBJ. And you can see it's quite a large file, it's 520. And if we look at our high-res one, that's actually quite massive as well. I don't know why that's so big. But anyway. Let's bring in our ultra dense and import. This may take a while because it's quite a dense mesh. Looks like that's loaded in. Cool, so now if we look on our outliner, we can see we've got our sourdough ultra dense from Photoscan VA2 mesh. And if we look in our viewport, we can like zoom in and have a look, and we can see that this is not a great orientation to work with. But we need to keep this orientation because whatever we import back into Photoscan, we need to import it back in this exact same position. So we need to make two positions. We need to make our reprojection positions and our working positions. So to do this, if I go to polymodeling and create a plane, and press R and scale it up, doesn't particularly matter so much. And what I'll do, I'm just going to move this plane to the base of the bread. I can assume that it's fairly flat on the bottom, and we'll just do a guesstimate. So we'll just roughly place that in the middle. You can snap it, but it's quite high res, so you might have some difficulty doing that. But I'll just roughly place this plane and orientate it to the sort of base of this bread. So I'll just put it down, just rotate it. So that's probably fairly reasonable for the bottom of it. So what I'll actually do, if I press S now, and as you see it's made a keyframe on the first frame. And if I open my channel box layer, we can see that everything's keyed now. So what we want to do is select our sourdough bread and middle mouse roller and drop it under our plane, or you can press P to parent it. So now whatever happens to this plane happens to the bread. So we have a key at the first frame of its original position. So I'm just going to go to the second frame, press S again and make another keyframe. But this time I'm going to go to my translates, select all my translates and rotates, press 0, And I'm going to press S again to key all. So that's now made that position and rotation keyed to our 0 origin. So now if we go through our frames 1 and 2, our first frame has kept our original projection position, and our second frame is our working position. So if I select our plane again, I can sort of rotate this around so this bread's a little bit more. We can effectively ignore the plane if we want to focus on the orientation of the bread. So I'm just going to rotate it around so it's kind of aligned with the origin. I'll press S to keyframe. And now next steps is to make sure that this is the right scale, because this is tiny at the moment. So if I just make a cube, there are many ways you can do this. This is just my preferred method. So at the moment, if we go to our attribute editor and select polycube, and see it's at 1 centimeter. So I know that how big this bread is, and it's approximately 22 centimeters wide. So what I'll do, I'll just put 22 centimeters in the width and depth, and just make a square. So now I can sort of see how small this bread is. So if I select the plane, press R for scale, and I can just scale this up until it roughly touches the edges. Like I said, it's going to be pretty ballpark, but we want to get the scale as close as possible, because we don't, once we've scaled it, we don't want to ever change it again, because this will affect our displacement and vector displacement maps. So once we're happy with the scale, we can press S. So because we're selecting it, we can't really see much because it's such a high res mesh. We can go to show, turn off selection highlighting, and now you won't have your highlighted selections. So now you can see the bread. And if you go to our channel box editor, just make sure we press S to key. So now we can go through our 2 frames, and we can see that we've got our. We can get rid of this box now because it's only for reference. We know it's approximately 22 centimeters wide. So we can scrub through, and we've got our roughly the correct scale and our position. So if I just turn my shapes off so we don't see that. So now we have our sourdough, we can use this as a workaround. We don't want to keep this plane in, but if we hide the plane, we hide the sourdough. So if I open up the plane, select the sourdough and press Shift P, that will remove it from the parent, but also transfer all the translation rotates and scale over. And now what I can do, I can select my plane and go to display layers and select this last one, and that will create a layer and place the plane inside. And I can just select V, and now it's hidden. And I can change this to R, so I can't now change it. Cool. So we've got our sourdough now, and we can go to shading, and we can turn our hardware texturing on. And we should be able to see the texture on it now. And you may get different results depending on what your graphics card is allowing for you to do. But so if you go to renderer, go to viewpoint 2.0, and you can turn off clamp, or you can just raise this to something like, just put 999, and I think it's only a maximum 8192. And you can just reload all the textures. It'll take a while, and now you're seeing the full res texture. So now you can see we've got a bread in Maya. Looks pretty good, but obviously we can't use it like this. Well, you can if you want, but obviously if you had like 30 of them or 50 of them, you might start getting heavy scenes, and it's not an optimal way of using it, because look how that mesh is so dense, and we can get away with using that in textures quite a lot. So what I'll do now, I'll just go through some different ways we can sort of retopologize this. I'll go through using, what we'll do first, we'll try out quad draw. I won't quad draw the whole thing because there are much quicker ways I can do this, but I just want to show you some quick little methods. So if I select my sourdough, then you can either hold right click and you have make live, or you can select this little magnet here and select it again, and it will say no live surface. Now if I select that, it now says the scan is ultradense is live. So if we go to our modeling toolkit, we can select quad draw. And like I say, I think most 3D softwares have some sort of retopology tool, and this is sort of Maya's basic one. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to draw on the scan. So if I just left click, so it's made a vertex, and I'll just left click and I'll make a square. So now if I hold a shift and left click, I've now made some geometry on it. So you can go around selecting left click and creating some geometry, hold shift to make it, and you can if you've made some bad choices, you can move them around. So because this is still quite a high res mesh, so it might be quite laggy. Quad draw, it does freeze sometimes, it's not the best, but I have some other methods we can do once this comes back. So yeah, I think once you've done it once, you should be able to move it around. I think it just gets stuck on, once you've built some and you've done your first sort of edit, the rest are fine. Just always, on mine it gets stuck on the first time I ever tried to move it. So you can just go around and start retopologizing. And it's quite quick. Hold shift to create your geometry. And this is a great way to get the exact geometry you want. I'm being quite rough with this because I'm probably not going to continue with doing this. I'll do it a different way. But if you wanted to see, I've got not very good resolution here, so I can hold control, left click, now make an edge loop, then it will snap into place. I can do that for the bits that I've got. But obviously this can be quite time consuming, and whether how much detail you really want to put into the mesh, because obviously we can go around and do all this. Then you've got to start really thinking how you want to start retopologizing this stuff, because you're going to want to get all the insides. And although quad draw is a lot quicker than just manually doing it, this can still be quite time consuming. So you can continue with this. It's good to sort of learn it if you're into that sort, if you want to do it a bit more precise. But because this is just going to be a static loaf of bread, I'm not too fussed about the topology of it. We can make it pretty good, but at the end there, it's just a loaf of bread. So, and it's entirely up to you if you want to continue doing it that way. I prefer to do it a much quicker way. So yeah, so we'll do that. So if you won't be able, until you turn off quad draw, you'll always be in it. So turn off quad draw, and we can hide our mesh. Press H, and we can see we've made some mesh here. But I don't really want to go around and start retopologizing all these cracks and holes. So I'm just going to delete that. But if you want to, you can. It's perfectly fine. I'm just going to do it. Use a much quicker method. So just going to select this and make sure nothing's live. So I'm just going to make a cube. I'm going to press R to scale it up. And I'm just going to scale it just enough so it covers the bread. turn on X-ray on to see if it's a little easier. Cool. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to, with my cube selected, I'm just going to go to mesh. I'm just going to smooth it. Don't worry for now, it's not going to look great. And what we can do, if we go to our attribute editor, we'll make sure our cube's selected. We'll go to poly smooth face and we'll just bring this up to like 2. And we'll scale it up, sort of fit better. And we can just, it doesn't matter if it's not fitting, we just want to make sure that all the bread's inside it. So we can sort of see that's now completely covered. If we turn on our selection highlighting, we can see how low res our mesh is. So now we've done that, we can select our sourdough again, our scan, and we'll make it live again. So now our scan is live. We're going to use this polycube, and with the polycube selected, and this works with any mesh that you already have, if you go to modeling toolkit and select quad draw, now this will see this as the quad draw object, and then now we can see our bread on the inside. Obviously our cube is now sort of eggy, sort of pill shaped, and we want to try and make it as tight around the scan as possible. So if you just hold shift, the shift relaxes to model. So if you hold shift, and you can just hold left click down, and you can see there's all sort of crazy stuff going on in the viewport. So if you just hold shift and left click, and just start wiping over the model. And as you can see, it's starting to match. There's some funny bits down here, so just hold shift. And you want to do this over the entire model. And don't worry that it's not completely fitting yet. We'll fix all that. We just want to do this in steps. So we can go around, just holding shift, and just relaxing the bread to place. And we've already got a very rough model that we won't use. We still need to subdivide this more, so we can turn off quad draw, make sure we're in model mode. Sorry, object mode. Then what we can do, we can go, once we've done that, because if we subdivide it too high, it can do some, it will just makes it a little bit heavier. It's easier to do it in steps. We want to do this as fast as possible. So if we just go to mesh, we can smooth it again. And let's select quad draw again. So now we can see we've got some more divisions on there now. If we hold shift and left click, we'll start going through the same process. And you can already see that this is a little bit faster than going through manually building it. Obviously we're not going to have the most perfect topology, but we will fix that when we start doing the displacement maps and the vector displacement maps. So let's just go around holding shift and making this mesh snugly fit round. And as this is going to be for a more VFX sort of asset, we can afford to have it a little bit more high res. We will do a tutorial on how to make this into more of a game model, which will be a lot quicker and way more low res than this. But I think we can afford to be a bit high res with this. So we can sort of see we've got some shape here. Obviously none of this is correctly topologized in here. Don't worry too much. We can turn our quad draw off again. And let's see if we go to object mode, we go mesh, smooth it one more time. And let's just stick one more smooth on it. Go to quad draw again. And we'll just hold shift. And just go through and just smooth it over it. So just go around. Obviously it's quite high poly as it is, but don't worry so much right now, we'll fix that. We just want to get a basic shape. So we'll probably leave it at that level of subdivision for Maya. And just make sure we've got as much of it. Because if we were going to use quad draw to properly retopologize it, we'd have to pay more attention to in here, because this is not great as it is. This is not really ideal for a model. So you wouldn't want to give any sort of artist a model that looks kind of like this, because they're probably quite upset. But we'll fix that. So yeah, I think it's pretty close now. It's so we've got a very basic mesh. We can turn quad draw off, select our object mode, and we can see that mesh is pretty much tightly covering around the entire mesh. We've got some issues here, but don't worry about that, we'll fix that. And so what we'll do, we'll just rename this SD sourdough low res mesh geo, and let's turn off make live on that. So, and we can probably make our scan into a layer. So let's rename this layer to position layer, because this is the one which is going to bring us back to our original photo scan position. And let's add our scan to a layer. And we can just hide that. So now we've got some pretty rough mesh. So we're pretty much done with this now. We do need to UV it at some point, but there's no point UVing it yet, as we'll do it after we've got our better base model. So what we'll do first, what we'll do finally is now just export this out for Maya and ZBrush. So if we just go File, Export Selection, we'll just make a new folder so we don't get it mixed up, and I'll just call this Base Mesh, and I'll call it SD low res mesh geo, which called low res mesh VO1. So export selection, because we don't have to worry, because we're going to completely rebuild this in a minute. Unless you're doing it through our quad draw, you can UV it, but like I say, we're going to try and do this through as most efficiently as possible. And now we need to select our sourdough. So if we turn that on, because you can't use your you can use your previous one, but don't forget your previous one is exported in the projection frame, so it will be in a completely wrong world space. We always want to be working in this space for any transfer of materials now, because once we've done that, if we change it, our displacements will break. So what we'll do is just select our sourdough, and we'll export that as well. I know it's in the base mesh, but we'll call it SD scan projection. So now we know that's only for scan projection. We'll select export, and it might take a little bit longer. Should say that one that's exported. It's quite a high res mesh, so it might take a little bit longer. Like I said, you can continue to retopologize this in a quad draw, but my preferred method is just to do it this way because it's a lot faster, and you can spend a lot of time drawing in topology and when there are a lot faster ways to do it. It's good to learn, but it's also good to know the shortcuts as well. Cool, so that's exported. So let's just turn it off. Cool. Our next step would be to bring this into ZBrush or Mudbox. Then what we'll do, we'll retopologize and bring in our high-res details onto our low-res mesh and probably bake out our displacement maps. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, hit that like button and subscribe for more like this.